Hello, everyone. Welcome to my November 2024 update. I'm Jeff Halper, the head of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, doing an update in terms of what's happening with Palestine, Israel, of course, every month, trying to keep up and trying to strategize about what we can do about what's happening. Uh, but at the same time, also trying to put it within a global perspective because we can't deal with Palestine in isolation. And of course, this month, today, I guess, a day after the American elections, there's really nothing else to talk about except what does the election of Trump mean for the Palestinians? Um, I'll see, I tend to kind of go on, so I'll see how much we deal with how much it means for all of us globally, because, Palestine is kind of emblematic. It's a microcosm of kind of world events and political processes, global North versus global South, and so on. And so from Palestine, we can learn a lot about what Trump means for the rest of us, but I don't want this to be a lecture, so I'll try to, maybe I won't go so far. At any rate, the point I think is that Trump is almost a perfect storm for the Palestinians. From the point of view of dismantling any kind of meaningful resistance, to what Israel is planning for the Palestinians, to the apartheid and the completion of the genocide in many ways, that we could expect. I want to talk a little bit later about what we do about it, because I'm not trying to depress us. I'm not trying to say that everything is lost and so on by any means. This is a struggle. But in a struggle, of course, you've got to be analytical. You have to be organized. You have to know where you're going. You have to know what countervailing forces you can draw upon. And so, in a sense, I think, obviously, my analysis is going to be kind of depressing and a downer, because there's not much good you can say about what Trump means for the Palestinians. But we have to look at this as a challenge. We have to really starkly set out what we're facing in order to be able to mobilize against it. Now, Trump is, I think the most important thing to understand about Trump is the transactionalism that he represents. International relations have always been transactional, but there's always been countervailing forces. There have been human rights, there's been values, there's realpolitik, there's strategies, and so on. With transactionalism that Trump really introduced almost as the exclusive form of international relations, there is none of that. It's all, as he calls, ultimate deals. I've been writing about it, and I think it's really important for us to understand what transactionalism means, especially as it relates to Palestinians and our ability to deal with our ability to deal with it, to counter it, and so on. I've written a short thing I just want to read because I think it's important for us to understand what transactionalism means. Let me just read this short paragraph. As domineering and often cynical as the old policies of realpolitik were and are in international relations, they had a certain grounding in some form of grand strategy and at least a token nod to a rules-based international order. By contrast, transactionalism, which has always been a feature of international relations, became the dominant element under Trump, and it continued under Biden. Purely instrumental, transactionalism knows no ideology. It holds no values beyond a kind of an Ayn Rand-like self-interest. Its worldview is zero-sum, where everything is lose-win deals. There's no room for vision, reciprocity, value-based policy, or understanding the other side, lest they compromise our national interests. America first, right? Transactionalism thus resists the idea of a rule-based international system, or granting any genuine authority to international institutions, such as the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, and so on. All these give way to short-term wins. This is the essence of the transactional world order. Dealings with other countries are based solely on what they can deliver. And what does that mean? That means that the weaker states, especially those of the global south, and especially in our case, the Palestinians, find themselves virtually excluded from the process of decision-making. There's simply no mechanism for engagement, for their engagement with the powerful. Certainly not on the basis of justice or rights or needs or international law. Overall, the world is filled with competitors, not allies, so that international relations drift into reactive, inconsistent, incoherent, and often unjust policies and actions that are Trump's trademarks. But the point here is, again, that that it's all based on what you can deliver. And Israel can deliver quite a bit. It's got a very strong military system, capable of both integrating and manufacturing, producing very sophisticated armaments. It has the whole security surveillance niche in some ways in terms of technologies repression that it's exporting. It has control of a vital geographical part of the world, in the Middle East. I mean, the Arab countries are dependent upon Israel in terms of any kind of pushback against Iran and so on. And of course, Israel's technologies of repression are very important for these autocratic Arab states in order to keep their own populations in control. So Israel is at the table with the big boys, with the United States and with the European countries. And we have to remember also with India, with China, with the BRICS countries. Israel is at the table. Israel is one of the major military suppliers to China, India, Brazil, and other major global South powers as well. And where are the Palestinians in all of this? They're lost. They're gone in a transactional world. What do they have to deliver? They have no control over anything. They have no resources to speak of. They have no control of their own territory even. They certainly have no military prowess, and they're simply not at the table. And the major problem in transactionalism is it's impossible to engage with the powers because there's nothing to engage with. If international law meant something, if a rules-based international system meant something to Trump and to Biden and to the powers that be, if you could talk about values or talk about a vision or a strategy or a need to kind of live together because, countervailing parties have to try to way to live together, you would have certain ways of engaging and negotiating. None of that is the case because transactionalism, of course, is connected to neoliberalism, and neoliberalism is basically a global north, global system that really has suffocated everything else. It's the only system. And even the BRICS countries have to participate, whether it's state capitalism or in other ways, in this kind of a system, especially since socialism, that was the main, and with the Soviet Union and so on, that was the main alternative, collapsed, in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And so one of our issues is how do we, on the Palestinian issue in particular, how do we engage? How do we push our issues forward? How do we protect the Palestinians? How do we move the international community to oppose genocide, to oppose apartheid, to support Palestinian rights in a transactional system in which all those things are laughable and have absolutely no traction? The other problem with Trump, of course, is that he has complete power. Now you've got a transactional president with absolute power. He's got the Senate. He'll probably have the House of Representatives. He has the Supreme Court. He has the whole state bureaucracy of the United States. Complete power for an amoral or immoral, political leader. And in terms of the Palestinians, and so he can do whatever he wants. And in terms of the Palestinians, what's really important to understand is that, Trump is not working with AIPAC and with the mainstream Jewish lobby, which has always, of course, been pro-Israel, but nevertheless is a certain liberal kind of an element to it. Trump has gone to another kind of Jewish leadership. Trump has an anti-Semitic, stream to him. He doesn't like Jews too much, but there's one kind of Jew he does like. And those are the Jews that fit his stereotype of Jews that are into money, that are good lawyers. Those are his Jews, and in particular, then, Orthodox Jews, the people that ran his companies, his lawyers. And if you look at his last administration, Jared Kushner, who's an Orthodox Jew, who married Ivanka, Trump's daughter, who became an Orthodox Jew. Look at David Friedman, who was the ambassador from the United States to Israel, an Orthodox Jew. So he's in a realm of Orthodox Jewish Zionism, right? Which is much more in tune with the settlers and with the religious Zionism than, let's say, AIPAC, which is much more secular and much more kind of liberal, if you can call AIPAC a liberal kind of a thing. And that's the real danger, because these Orthodox Zionists are the ones that are really they have no compunction whatsoever in terms of destroying the Palestinians and absolutely turning Palestine into a religious kind of land of Israel. And we saw that with the Abrahamic Accords, where they came in with Jared Kushner and David Friedman. The American embassy was moved to Jerusalem. And don't forget, Biden did not remove it from Jerusalem again. So Biden has a good transactional element to himself. They recognize the annexation of the Golan Heights. And now I think, and this is the point, now Trump is going to complete the Abrahamic Accords, probably with this group of Orthodox Jews that he surrounded himself with in terms of Palestine. He doesn't like Netanyahu very much, which is interesting. So he's following his own agenda. He's following not Netanyahu, he's following the Orthodox Jews here, especially the religious Zionists who are the settlers, and those are the ones that are going to be dictating the terms. And so we're going back to normalization, and we're going back to completing the Abrahamic Accords, of which, of course, Saudi Arabia is the jewel in the crown, the missing piece. Jared Kushner has been working with Saudi Arabia ever since Trump left power 4 years ago. It's reported that he's made $2 billion in all kinds of business dealings with Saudi Arabia. Jared Kushner, if we remember, said not long ago, the bright side of what's happening in Gaza is it's opened all this beachfront property for real estate development. And I don't think he said that in jest. So that you have this unholy coalition of a transactional president with complete power and no values and no ideology. In terms of Palestine, in alliance with Orthodox religious Zionists who have an absolute idea of a Jewish land of Israel in which there are no Arabs. I mean, they don't even know, what Arabs are, these Orthodox Jews, and together with the Saudis and what we call the moderate Sunni Arab states. Now, this might be a countervailing force. I mean, I would certainly urge the Muslim communities all over the world, but also ourselves, to begin to pressure these Arab countries not to cooperate in this normalization process. What does normalization mean? We've talked about it before. It means that a greater Israel, the Israel and all of historic Palestine, with all the settlements, is legitimized. You know, when Biden even talked about normalization, and that's what he's been pushing all these months. It was interrupted by the Hamas attack on October 7th, but this is where he's going. If you remember, Netanyahu held up the map of a greater Israel within the new Middle East in the UN just 2 weeks before October 7th. This is where they're going. But in none of the discussions of normalization has there ever been any hint that the settlements should be dismantled. The settlements are a part of the normalization. In other words, we're normalizing with a greater Israel from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River. The Palestinians will be locked into less than 10% of their land in these islands of areas A in the West Bank, maybe a little bit area B, and uninhabitable Gaza. And that's it. And there is absolutely no countervailing force that I can see right now that can stop this, because you've got this Trump transactional Orthodox Jewish, Saudi kind of a coalition, and again the Palestinians aren't even on the table, aren't even at the table. And so I think that's what we're going to be looking at. I think it could happen very quickly. I'm sure Trump is interested in completing the Abrahamic Accords. And of course, he's very close to the Arabs because these autocratic Arab governments are themselves super transactional. Couldn't give a damn about human rights or Palestinians or whatever. Unlike the Palestinian street, the Arab street, of course. So our real question is going to be, how do we mount some kind of countervailing force? How do we push back against this in a transactional system in which engagement is very difficult? And for that, I have ideas. I'm not going to get into it right now, but we need some real serious discussion. So I was in London. I just got back from a 3-week tour of the UK with ICAHD. I was at the march in London on Saturday, thousands of people. It was very moving and so on, moving speeches from the podium and so on. But social movements and weekly protests are not going to stop the elimination of the Palestinians. We have to begin to think about organization, and there's a challenge for the Palestinians here, and we have to say this. The Palestinians are going to have to step up and lead because we can't represent them. And unless there's a political program, and I've been pushing with my Palestinian comrades, the one democratic state, whatever, if there's no political program that there isn't today, and there's really no political leadership on the part of the Palestinians. I mean, people are speaking out. Palestinians, were leading the march in London, and there's articles and the voices are there, but it hasn't been translated into political organization. Unless that happens, and we can all come together behind a political program and organization, and then try to find the partners in the international system to work with, you know what? It's going to be a hard fight to push back against the Abrahamic Accords. So I'm sort of laying that out. I'll leave it at that. I probably talked too long, but this is really a super challenge for us because Trump brings transactionalism to a whole new level, and I think not only in terms of Palestine, but in terms of every issue that all of us are involved with, including climate change, of course, what I've been talking about relates not only to Palestine, but to everything that we hold dear. I'll leave it at that, and to be continued. Bye.